What's up, Earth Rockers? It's your boy Shovatar here, and welcome, one and all, to the Pain Dimension. The Pain Dimension is what I call hard mode max level 1 on Charlotte. And of course, to make very clear what this footage is, if it's not clear enough by the title, this is hard mode max level 1, but this is hard mode max level 1 with New Game Plus. With Konami Man, with Twin B, which are items that are going to buff my offensive stats from the very start. I'm also going to have access to all the spells and all the items I had in my previous save file, so the difference between hard mode level 1 on a fresh file and hard mode level 1 on New Game Plus cannot really be overstated. It's really a completely different experience, and hard mode max level 1 on a fresh file is basically too hard for me. It's not the kind of thing that I think I can do a whole continuous run of. I could probably beat the whole thing. I think I have the familiarity with this game to sit down and do that, but I really don't like gameplay challenges where you don't do a lot of damage, which is what hard mode max level 1 on a fresh file would be, because your damage is partially dependent on your stats, and if your max level is level 1, the only thing you have to change your stats is weapons. So that's why I'm doing it on New Game Plus and not on a fresh file. Just because this seems like it would be more fun and more balanced. I should also actually explain the footage itself, because I think I neglected to do this in my previous videos. So, this is a Nintendo DS game. And the reason you're only seeing one screen of the Nintendo DS is because trying to fit both screens of a Nintendo DS into a 16:9 YouTube video is not super practical. As you can see by the black bars flanking the footage on either side, it's still not exactly perfect, just having one screen, but that's just a consequence of how the game is presented, and it would be even worse if I was trying to fit both screens into the video at the same time. So, what I do is, since I'm playing this on emulator, I have the emulator display one screen, and then I can hit a hotkey to swap to the other screen whenever I want. And that's how I play the game, that's also how I record the game. So that's why you're only seeing one screen and not seeing the second screen. Is that all I have to explain? I think that should about do it. To give you guys a brief illustration of the difference between like max level 1 on a fresh save and max level 1 for New Game Plus, right now I have 608 HP. If this was a fresh file, I would have 128 HP. And keep that in mind, I'm probably going to get hit during the City of Haze at some point, so keep that in mind when I do get hit. Like, keep in mind, like, how much damage I'm taking compared to a max HP of 128, as opposed to max HP of 608. And I'm going to give a little bit of a disclaimer on healing items. When I played max level 1 New Game Plus with Jonathan, I gave myself a stipulation that I didn't want to use any healing items. Or was this for my normal mode run? I actually don't remember this now. My point is that for both of these runs, I gave myself a stipulation of... well, actually, let me finish my previous thoughts. I don't want to sound misleading. I did definitely use healing items in my Jonathan New Game Plus run. I don't remember if I managed to only use them in the Nest of Evil, because I think that's what I wanted, but I don't remember if I pulled that off. Anyway, the point is that in both cases, the stipulation that I gave myself was that I would get 9 potions, and I would get 9 high potions at the start of the game, and then I would never ever go back to the vendor to get more potions after that point. And whatever I have now in my inventory is what I'm going to have for the rest of the game. And right there, first time I get hit, that's 102 damage. Keep in mind that's with the end game armor that I kept on from my past file. So if I had gotten hit there on New Game Plus on a fresh file with no end game armor and with that same amount of damage and with max HP of 128, I may have just died if I had gotten hit by that bone. So when I say max level 1 on a fresh file is too hard, that's the kind of shit that I'm talking about. And that's because that's a level of difficulty that actually exceeds anything you would find in even the classic Castlevania games. Because even in the most brutal classic Castlevania games, you would die in 4 hits. And the enemies in these new Castlevania games are designed in ways where they are much more complicated and much more evasive than the enemies in in older Castlevania games because the nature of the gameplay in and of itself is different. And yeah, that part right there with the swarm of ghouls that all walk super fast and poison you is just kind of a fucking nightmare. I should also okay. So I'm actually not done explaining the video yet. This run is moving at such a fast pace that I feel like I'm getting like whiplash. So Charlotte. This is a Charlotte only run where I'm going to be only playing as Charlotte for the entirety of the run. I'm going to swap to Jonathan here and there to use Jonathan in the late game because Jonathan is going to get an ability that lets him jump really high. Charlotte has a similar ability that lets her turn into an owl, but using Jonathan's super jump is just faster than like opening up the pause menu, swapping to owl form for Charlotte, then swapping back to the other spell I was using after I'm finished using it. It's just simpler to swap to Jonathan for those situations. So both New Game Plus gives if you're starting a fresh file on if you're starting a new run with New Game Plus, you keep all of the sub-weapon masteries that you had for Jonathan, and you also keep all the spells you got for Charlotte, except for the spells that involve exploration, like the owl form. You don't start off with that in New Game Plus. But I start off with Explosion, I start off with Thunderbolt, I start off with Spirit of Light and Piercing Beam, and that in conjunction, and all of the weapons that she has by the end of a normal file, like Tome of Arms 3, Tome of Arms X, and the consequence of that is that Charlotte's high damage output, which is her most notable trait, is going to be really, really emphasized in these early levels. And this is kind of like the conundrum between, do you play hard mode on New Game Plus or on a fresh file? If you play hard mode on a fresh file, then the early game is oppressively and preposterously difficult. But if you play New Game Plus, if you play hard mode on New Game Plus, then as you can see, the early game is preposterously easy because the Dualahan gets two-shot by a fully charged Thunderbolt. Something that I want to mention, because this is actually really important, is that, like I just said, between New Game Plus, you get to keep all the items you got in previous runs. And if you are really attentive, and you've watched my previous, or if you've just seen Charlotte gameplay in general, or if you've played Portrait of Ruin, you might notice that Charlotte's spellcasting back there seemed a little bit fast. That's because I have the most important item that Charlotte can get carrying over from a previous run into New Game Plus is an accessory called the Sorceress Crest, which decreases cast time. And Charlotte's cast time is sort of like her biggest limitation, is the fact that she has to take the time to charge up a spell before casting it. It's the fact that she can't jump while casting, she has to just stand on the floor, and also she has to take the time to actually cast. That creates a lot of problems throughout the run, but with the Sorceress Crest, that sort of takes that particular limitation and removes it. And that becomes really, really important in the Stella Loretta fight, which I'm going to wait to talk about until later. Until that point, it just basically becomes a convenience thing. Now, how do you get the Sorcerer's Crest? You get the Sorcerer's Crest by completing a quest. You get the crest from a quest that Wind gives you towards the end game to collect all of Charlotte's spells, which is easier than the Jonathan equivalent quest, which is to get Jonathan to master every sub-weapon, which is how you get the Stellar Sword for Jonathan, which is really awful. But getting every tome for Charlotte is still kind of annoying because it involves farming drops from certain enemies. So it's still not great that she has such an important tool locked behind farming, especially because the real problems are tomes that only drop from enemies in the Nest of Evil, because it means you have to keep on doing the Nest of Evil. When you do the Nest of Evil, you can only do one floor at a time. It's not like you can go into a room and then leave the room and then come back into it again. So, like Thor's Bellow, for example, is is a lightning summon spell that Charlotte gets, and it only drops from the horse demons that show up in the Nest of Evil. So the only way to really farm it is to do the 4th floor of the Nest of Evil over and over and over again, because the first room of the 4th floor has one of the horse demons in it, and then if it doesn't drop off that guy, you just have to do the whole floor again. Fortunately, you can teleport between floors in the Nest of Evil, so it's not like in Circle of the Moon, because in Circle of the Moon, there were certain items that only dropped from enemies at the very end of the battle arena, which is an area that's very, very similar to the Nest of Evil in Portrait of Ruin. It's like a series of challenge rooms, basically, and in the battle arena in Circle of the Moon, you could only do it like in one big chunk, all like 18 fucking rooms or however many rooms the battle arena had. I don't really remember. That zombie dragon, by the way, I'm fairly sure the zombie dragon behaves like attacks more quickly on hard mode than he does on normal mode. And I'm pretty sure that's why I got hit there by that fire breath, but fighting the zombie dragon in general is actually kind of hard because you want to close distance with him, because if you're too far away from him, then he does like the fire breath attack or the poison breath attack, and those are both pretty tricky to dodge, but it's tough to figure out how close you have to get to bait him into using his melee attacks while not also being so close to him that you actually get hit by his melee attacks. So it's a tricky balancing act. It's much easier on Jonathan, because with Jonathan you're directly incentivized to close distance, so you can just you want to get close to him in the first place. And by the way, I want to point out something too, which is that room that I just like hopped through was like really good, but this stretch here through the caverns is actually one of the more dangerous parts of the entire game, because I'm going all the way from the caverns to right before the Sandy Grave without any save stations. Or no, there's a save station before Karamet. So basically I'm going through... The caverns is a really dangerous area, because there's lots of enemies there that can hit you really quickly. And even on New Game Plus, on hard max level 1, I can only take like 5 or 6 hits before I die. And that might sound like a lot, but if you saw how fast those bats are moving back there, then hopefully you can understand how you might just like... Taking 5 hits in the caverns is not that hard to actually do. Between the zombie dragon and the shades, the frozen shades that shoot their shit at you really fast, and like the bats flying around, you can absolutely die down there. So getting out of there is sort of a tall notion. Everything's going so fast, I can't remember if I even covered everything. I think I've got the basics of the run down. This is another thing about like... This is a perfect example of why I'm so glad that I'm doing this on New Game Plus, because that boss is super obnoxious to fight under normal circumstances, but trying to fight him if you're at level 1 would just take fucking forever. So that's like, you know, it would be harder, but it wouldn't be fun, which is that's why I'm not doing this on a fresh file. And I'm not gonna belabor that point any further. I feel like I've already said that like a million times, so I'm gonna try to focus more on what's actually happening. So the Sandy Grave coming up is much less of an issue on... well, it's actually probably about the same on Jonathan as it is on Charlotte. It's actually probably harder, because the thing that Jonathan has mastered shurikens, and mastered shuriken... Why am I standing here? Okay. The mastered shuriken just makes everything so much easier, because it's instant, and it does a ton of damage, and you can like throw it down on things from the air, which means you can do it from a position of safety. Charlotte is not like that. I just took 224 fucking damage, because the mummies didn't really telegraph their attack at all, and I thought I could land in between them. Go down into the sand pit. Oh, okay, well, okay. So, okay. The reason I said go down in the sand pit because there's an energy tank down there, but I could just go to the save station, so it doesn't matter. Energy tanks are what I call the things that increase your maximum health, which don't actually increase your maximum health in max level 1. I start out with 608 because I'm coming in from an already completed file, but your max health can't go above 608 in hard max level 1. They set a limit on it, which I'm very grateful for, because it means that even if you're not doing it on a fresh file, there is like a basic cap to your stats in this difficulty. And the reason I dipped in there real quick to get that into that room, I don't know if you even saw what was in there, but there's a teleport tablet in there, and that's because I'm gonna have to come back here to get the Sanctuary's Tome to get to the second half of the game. And since I'm not concerned about map completion, because I've already... On New Game Plus, the game will remember, basically, that you've unlocked the Nest of Evil if you've unlocked the Nest of Evil in the past. New Game Plus remembers your map completion rate. So I don't really have to worry about map completion. It means that I can just take the fastest route to whatever part of the game I want to get to. And normally, because the way I would do this in a normal run is I would go... the normal route through the Sandy Grave on the first run, and then come back and go through the basement on the second run, so that way I could get map completion. But because I don't need map completion, now I can just go through the basement on the first run to get that teleport point, and then use the teleport point to come back to the basement for the second run to get the Sanctuary spell, because the basement is where the Sanctuary spell is. I hope that made sense. And I hope I'm also demonstrating here like why this part is hard. It's because ghosts just like fucking fly at you. And they do 110 damage. Hard mode is the biggest differences between hard mode and normal mode are everything does more damage. That's kind of the biggest difference. Some enemy behaviors are different, and some of these differences are significant, and some are not. Usually they are. Usually it's just as simple as this enemy moves faster, which is simple, but it's also really impactful. Some of the bosses behave a little bit differently too, I want to say. Yeah, the ectoplasm, as you can see there, is moving a lot faster. The ghosts are fucking flying at me. I'm sure those turrets fire faster. I'm absolutely certain they do. I can't say for sure I've ever seen it happen, but if the turrets in Dracula's Curse hard mode fired faster, I'm certain that the turrets in Portrait of Ruin hard mode fired faster. And as I already mentioned, the zombies in the City of Haze poison you on contact, and the ghouls in 13th Street are going to do the same thing. Which is a very, very big problem, because poison in this game is really debilitating. You take double damage, you deal half damage, and you take slow damage over time. So getting poisoned is the worst thing that can possibly happen to you here. And I'm interested to see, okay, how I play this. I think this is another boss that's just going to go down real fast. This is one of those things that I kind of wish was a little bit different, because when I play, I mean, I guess in a way it makes sense, because it creates more of a traditional difficulty curve, where if you play on a fresh file, the difficulty curve is sharply reversed, because the early game is so, well, on max level 50 anyway, on max level 1 fresh file, I guess the difficulty curve is consistent, but it's also ridiculous. Although, getting Master Shuriken would probably create a pretty big downturn in... Whatever. My point is that the fact that the early game on New Game Plus is so easy does make it feel a little bit cheap to just like burn through the Doulahan and burn through the Behemoth and burn through Cleopatra, but it also creates more of a traditional difficulty curve where the early game is really easy, and then once you get to the end of the game, then it actually gets hard. Well, like I said, the caverns can actually be pretty tricky. Oh, excuse me, sorry. But again, that's mostly because of the bats. But really the biggest thing about New Game Plus that I like is the fact that you can start off with the winged boots, which means that you can zoom around really fast from the start. Because so not only am I casting faster, I'm also moving faster, which is probably more impactful than I think it is. I can't necessarily point to a specific moment in the early game and say, oh well, this is way easier because I have the winged boots, but I'm sure it's relevant more than I notice, because it's important. Like having like faster movement speed is such an important thing, and like any game that lets you increase your movement speed, it's like always good, because it just means you can do everything faster. You can get more aggressive because you can back off more quickly. You can just get to things faster. You can get things done faster. You can close distance. You can reestablish distance. It's like it's a stat that simultaneously increases your offense and your defense by like an incalculable amount. And something that I mentioned in my in one of my videos was that the winged boots are especially important in the context of hard mode, because in hard mode, the fact that everything does so much damage means that dodging is now way more valuable. If you dodge an attack now in hard mode, it's not like you just dodged, 5% of your health being taken off. You just dodged like 20% or 25% of your health being taken off, or more depending on the boss, depending on the situation. So giving up an armor slot that might give you some more defense is not a great feeling, but it's easily and inarguably worth it for the higher movement speed, because the higher movement speed means more dodging, more reactivity, more options, more betterer gameplay, essentially. Another thing that is only going to really become relevant now that I'm in the Nation of Fools on hard mode, is that hard mode, this is something that they started doing in Aria of Sorrow, I think, which is that they made hard mode specific, not just increase the damage you take in general, but increase the damage that you take from environmental hazards by a huge amount. Like spikes that before, I think they do damage based on percentage. I don't know what exactly the percentages are, but to give you a rough estimate, I think if I walked into a swinging blade right now, I would probably take about a quarter of my health in damage, whereas if it was normal mode, I think I'd only take about an eighth of my damage and health. I think that's roughly correct. But it's more complicated than that, because environmental hazards also deal damage. Maybe they don't deal flat percentage-based damage, because I noticed that when it comes to the fire rings in the Nation of Fools, I noticed that Jonathan takes... Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. Jonathan takes more damage from them than Charlotte does, which would suggest that it's hitting... that it interacts somehow with the mind stat. So maybe the swing blades interact somehow with the defense stat, so maybe it's actually not percentage-based. But it's a giant fucking number is my point. And so here I have to be extra careful to avoid them for that reason, because if I get hit by them, then it's going to be a shit show. And I actually lost a couple attempts here, because I'm playing this part... I'm playing these like New Game Plus runs like a classic Castlevania game, kind of, where it's like, I want to do it all in one life. If I die, I have to start over. And I lost a couple runs to the Caverns, and I lost a couple runs to the Nation of Fools because of... did I? I thought I did. Because the only reason I'm not sure now is because that was so smooth. Maybe I'm wrong. You know what? The problem is that I did so many runs of this game that I can't like remember what happened in which one. I can't remember like what I died to. Where I can't imagine. It's actually hard to imagine that I would lose any runs. I know this took me multiple attempts. I'm sure I died at least once in the caverns, just because I was stubborn and I didn't want to use healing items that early, but I feel like, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, wow, I forgot that happened. I don't know what the hell happened there exactly, but it looked like, because the Legion boss is weak to fire, and it looked like Explosion just, like, kept happening. Explosion was targeting the center of it, which normally... Because the way the Legion boss works is like two phases. Phase 1 is when it's, like, fully formed, and then Phase 2 is when all the corpses fall off and it turns into, like, a tentacle monster. And it's not like... You can't skip Phase 2 by attacking the center. If you attack the center enough, then eventually all the outer parts of it will fall off, and it'll go to Phase 2. It's not like you can just, like, kill it directly and skip Phase 2. But there, I think it just died so fast that Phase 2 never had a chance to, like, happen. It looked like Explosion just, like, kept hitting it. I actually don't know off the top of my head how much health Legion has. I know the Doulahan is, like, 600. I know Karamet is 666. I know the Behemoth is, like, 400 something, and I think Cleopatra's, like, 1200. But I don't know how much health Legion has. Anyway, this is all going by super fast. The first half of the game is going to go by super fast for the reasons I mentioned, which is that having all access to all this stuff makes the early game really, really easy. But we're going to come up now on the first part of the game that I think is really dangerous, which is the Stella boss fight at the start of the Tower of Death. Stella, and this is mostly really dangerous because I'm just not, like, good at this fight. I've pretty much flubbed every Stella fight that I've done in the footage that I've looked at so far of what I've uploaded. So let's see if this is any better. Okay, that's pretty fucking stupid. That's also pretty fucking stupid. Because the whole point of staying on the ground is that she's not supposed to do the fucking hurricane attack, but then she just does it anyway. Okay, well... that could have been worse, I guess. It's like... I mean, the only reason that wasn't any worse is just that she, like, died before I could fuck up anymore, basically. And that's kind of like the saving grace of New Game Plus, is that... And probably also why some of my later Stella fights were not good, because I recorded this stuff in, like, reverse order of how I uploaded it, where I uploaded the Jonathan stuff first, but I actually recorded the Charlotte stuff first, and the Jonathan stuff second, and I did that for kind of a weird reason. I could have done it either way. I decided to do the Jonathan runs, to actually record the Jonathan runs second, so that way when I started on Richter mode, I could go right from, like, playing a guy with a whip to playing a different guy with a whip. Because I wanted my, like, muscle memory and my, like... just the way the game felt to be smooth between Jonathan mode and Richter mode. So that was why I did Jonathan second. Even though when I first started playing the game, of course, I played as Jonathan first, then I did, like, Charlotte, and it kind of went back and forth. That's part of the reason why this, like, took so long, because I kept on... Is this gonna kill me? This is actually kind of scary. Ooh, okay, okay, okay. Okay. Jesus. I feel like if she had hit me after that, I might have actually died there. I don't know. Anyway, if you're wondering why I did that, it was for a quest, because... Wait. No, I got confused. I think I said, okay, wow, this is, like, really bad. I'm, like, totally out of it. Okay, so I said earlier that you don't have to do quests to unlock the Nest of Evil on New Game Plus. That's actually not true. You do have to do that. I was confusing it with Richter mode. In Richter mode, you don't have to do map completion to unlock the Nest of Evil. It just unlocks after you finish, after you finish 13th Street. Sorry about that. I had to adjust my microphone. I'm still not, like, totally confident on a good position to be in for it. Anyway, Yeah, you do still have to do quests to unlock the Nest of Evil on New Game Plus, unfortunately, but you don't have to rediscover parts of the map. The game just remembers that you have the map completion. Um, but you still have to actually do the Nest of Evil quest from Wind to unlock it. Sorry, this is like really fucking like weird bad commentary so far. I don't know. I don't even know what fucking planet I'm on. It's partially because the early game, like the early game is so fast and so easy that I don't really have much to say. Um, and I remember my Jonathan video, I ran out of things to say during the Forest of Doom. So I'll try to come up with something here. I guess I'll be going through it faster, so I won't have to talk about it for that long. Isn't it weird that the bees are like purple? That's pretty strange. Don't you think? What does this look like? This looks like something. This looks like, what does this look like? Something about those, like, abandoned, like, the abandoned classroom look. Maybe if we go back into one of those rooms, it'll jog my memory. But I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think we're just done with the whole classroom thing, and now we're just wandering around in courtyards. Those stairs go right into the wall. I didn't notice that until just now. I played this game for 200,000 hours, and I never noticed until now that the stairs in the Dark Academy just go into the fucking wall. It's funny. They literally don't go anywhere. They just stop at the wall. This isn't the Dark Academy. Sorry, there's a later level, the remix version of this. Because the first 4 paintings are like the first 4 levels, and then the next 4 paintings are like different versions of the first 4 levels. And the different version of the Forest of Doom is called the Dark Academy, but I think of it as the Dark Academy even if it's the Forest of Doom, because most of the Forest of Doom level takes place inside of a building. It doesn't feel like a forest level, even though it's called the Forest of Doom. So I just sort of think of this as like the Dark Academy Part 1, and then the next one's going to be the Dark Academy Part 2. Oh, there's actually an interesting moment coming up here. So there's a one of the differences between hard mode is that, okay, that's how I do it. The corpse weed enemies, which is the big plant thing that I just exploded, start off fully formed. In normal mode, they remain in like a weed, like a plant stage for a little bit. That's interesting too. Explosion was targeting where the together was, even though it hadn't like phased in yet. So, which suggests to me that it's already spawned in at that point, but it doesn't like actually do the teleport in animation until it gets like activated, until you get like too close to it, which is interesting. Because otherwise Explosion wouldn't have targeted it if it wasn't there. Yeah, the corpse weed. The fact that the corpse weed starts off fully formed and ready to spit poison at you, combined with that room back there where I walked into a tiny room and it was nothing but a corpse weed. That room is like one of the biggest like head scratchers in the entire game, because I don't like, I got hit there, right? I didn't die, of course. I only took one hit from it before I killed it, but I have no idea how you would ever fight that thing without taking damage from it. I think I've managed it before, but I think it kind of involved like basically just getting lucky with the timing of my, but I think it was on Jonathan, and I think it involved just getting lucky with the timing of my sword swings. This is also interesting because on this recording I can see through the darkness well enough to see the frogs, but in the game I distinctly remember it being too dark for me to see them. So that's very odd. Maybe my brightness is just higher than it was back then? Or maybe the recording somehow got brighter. I really don't know. Well, wait, why would it be recording my... whatever. I don't know. I don't know how anything works. Okay, this boss on New Game Plus is, having explosion for this guy is a real miracle, because it means that I can, like, actually damage it in a way that's consistent. Because on in my normal mode Charlotte run, I hit this guy with a spell called Spirit of Light, which shoots out two projectiles that like home in, but they're not really that good at it, and sometimes they just don't hit what you want them to hit. And against this boss, Spirit of Light, it's like sometimes it hits him and then sometimes it doesn't hit him, and whether it does or doesn't is just sort of like a coin toss. But now here, Explosion is always hitting this thing, and as a result it goes down pretty fast. Because the water boss is, for some reason, weak to fire. Go fucking figure that one out. I think I said in my Jonathan New Game Plus video, in between all my bitching and whining, that this is the most fun way to play the game. And I think that's true. And the reasons for that are... And it's actually almost even more true for Charlotte, because Charlotte gets to start off the game with the Sorceress Crest. Because the fact that you have to farm the Nest of Evil to get the Sorceress Crest actually replicates a problem with Circle of the Moon, which is that in Circle of the Moon, the DSS cards you get from the battle arena, you have to get for farming the battle arena. But the thing about that is that if you're farming the battle arena in Circle of the Moon, like, you don't fucking need any more DSS cards. You're obviously high enough level to get the tools you need to beat the game easily. So there's no point to ever going for those cards. And with Charlotte, like, by the time you can get the Sorceress Crest, the game's like practically over already, because you have to get you would have to farm the horse demons in the Nest of Evil. You would have to do a quest to kill Gurgoth in the Nest of Evil. So all you would really have left to do after that is the Dracula fight. And the Dracula fight, or the Death Dracula fight, I mean, it's definitely easier with the Sorceress Crest, but like, it would be nicer to be able to take advantage, like, something as fun, as faster casting time. It would be nice to be able to take advantage of that throughout the entire game, and that's what New Game Plus lets you do. And that's why I was kind of dismissive of the concept of New Game Plus when it first cropped up in Aria of Sorrow, but in retrospect, I kind of get it now. Because the idea is, like, you get to use all your tools from the very start. What was missing, though, in Aria of Sorrow, and the reason I never fucked with New Game Plus until Portrait of Ruin, is that nothing in Aria of Sorrow, or Dawn of Sorrow for that matter, was ever hard enough to make me feel like I needed New Game Plus. Portrait of Ruin hard mode feels like it's balanced around New Game Plus. Like, this is like, just feels normal. The fact that I'm dying in 5 or 6 hits, like I'm doing a lot of damage, but I'm taking a lot of damage, it feels more like how the game is supposed to be. And this is the most dangerous room in the game. This is where I lost runs. I would lose runs to this fucking room, because I was, like, stubborn. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, yeah. Does this kill it? Okay, thank God. So, yeah, that right there is, like, this room is a fucking nightmare to try to clear on hard mode, because all the Medusa heads petrify you. The spikes do 1/3 of your max health and damage. That was 201, I have 608, so almost a third. The Cloaked Knight is just impossible to fight well, because it's like sometimes your attacks... I mean, I guess Thunderbolt would probably kill him in, like, one shot. So that might have actually just been the result of bad spell selection, but for some reason I was, like, stuck on the idea of Spirit of Light for hitting him. I don't really know why. But the reason I would lose runs there is because, like I said, I have 9 potions, I have 9 high potions, and I want to save as many healing items as I possibly can for the Nest of Evil. So I basically don't want to use any healing items until the Nest of Evil, which, now that I'm saying that again, I think I actually did manage to pull off for my Jonathan New Game Plus run. Because that phrase sounds familiar to me. I think I did do that. I think I wanted to do the same thing with Charlotte, but there, I couldn't quite do it. I had to drink a high potion there because it was just too fucking risky to run around one spike tick away from death in that room. I also want to point something out about the dual crush that I used there, Greatest 5, which is that Greatest 5, which is supposed to be the strongest dual crush in the game, did 33 damage to everything in that room. And you might think that I'm gearing up for a complaint right now, but I actually like the fact that dual crushes suck in MaxLv1 hard mode, which would... I don't know why they suck exactly. I don't know why Greatest 5 is doing 35 damage. I suspect that it's because there must be some component of dual crushes that is dependent upon player level to determine its damage. I don't know how the damage is calculated exactly, but I'm guessing that's what it is, because on hard mode in general, Greatest 5 does normal damage. But if you're at MaxLv1, it only does 33. But I actually like that fact, because I don't really like dual crushes as a concept. I think that you shouldn't be able to just, how much is this gonna do? 43 damage. Yeah, that was like a Hail Mary, pretty much. I wanted to make absolutely sure, that it didn't do any damage. I'm glad that you can't, because like the early game is easy enough as it is, and it's good in my opinion that you can't just like crush everything with Greatest 5 from the start. But what's interesting is that Greatest 5 actually still has some use. Like I managed to use it there in that room to kill the Cloak Knight. Excuse me, which I really should have just used Thunderbolt for, whatever. And then there's going to be a really interesting usage of Greatest 5 towards the very end of the game, which I'm not going to talk about until it happens, because it's actually pretty interesting. But normally, you should probably never use... The only dual crush you should ever use on MaxLv1 hard mode is Holy Lightning for the Bronner fight, because as you can see, whatever niche uses Greatest 5 might have, it drains like over half of your MP. Because another thing about MaxLv1 is that your HP is hard capped at 608 and your MP is hard capped at 400, I think, or like 415. 400 would make more sense, but it might be something weird like 415. So MP expansions will restore your MP but won't actually increase the maximum, and energy tanks will restore your health but won't actually increase your maximum health. So what that means is that it's not like... Greatest 5 is always going to take off that chunk of MP. There's nothing you can do to mitigate that problem. And here is another final guard. Not quite the final guard yet. I'm gonna commemorate when I don't have to ever fight one of these guys ever again, but now is not the time. Fortunately, I do have the best tool for fighting them that Charlotte can get, which is Acidic Bubbles. This drops from the I don't think you've actually ever seen one on screen in this run, because the only one that I fought like died super fast. But there's a poison-breathing dog enemy that can randomly drop Acidic Bubbles. And do I actually do the Stella Loretta fight here? Okay, no, I can't do it yet because I don't have Sanctuary. Right. So now I have to go back to the Sandy Grave, get Sanctuary, then come back again and fight Stella and Loretta. And that's going to be the first part of this video. Not that I'm uploading this video in parts, but this is the first segment of the commentary, and you'll notice that because there's going to be a cut in the video, and then my voice will suddenly and inexplicably drop by like 3 decibels, or by not decibels, octaves. My voice will suddenly drop 2 octaves whenever I start a new commentary session. I have no idea what that's about. I was listening back to some of my like commentary videos the other day, and it's like every time a new like commentary segment starts, it's like my voice gets deeper. I don't know why. I'm not doing that on purpose. I think it's just because as a commentary wears on, my voice gets a little bit more worn out and maybe more high pitched. So it's actually my voice going back to normal after I've finished wearing it out at the end of a long stretch of commentary. So yeah, that's actually one use of Greatest 5. And there it was 66 instead of 33 because these enemies are all weak to Holy. So that was a pretty good usage of it, but that wasn't the usage I was talking about. But I'm glad I was finding uses for it. Because that like that little section right there, like I don't really know what else I could have done to get out of that. Because I was just getting swarmed by ghosts, and the fact that the skeleton dragon is right there and it's like spazzing out the whole time means that you can't like. It never feels safe to jump away from the ghosts, and you can't jump away from the ghosts because the ghosts are in your fucking way in the first place. So it's like, it's just a fucking nightmare that never ends. I did give myself a stipulation of only using so many healing items, but really, like, any healing item stipulation is a little bit silly when you factor in the fact, when you, in, like, the context of Portrait of Ruin, kind of the same way that it would be in, like, Circle of the Moon, or even Harmony of Dissonance, even though I did it. Oh, and Aria of Sorrow, actually. Specifically, all of those games that I just listed have ways of getting, like, infinite health, basically, if you're not in an active combat situation. I guess that would be the difference, because in Circle of the Moon, there was a spell combo called Jupiter Mandragora that, where it's like if you stood still, you slowly regained health, and here in Portrait of Ruin, Charlotte has a healing spell, so if I'm not in an active combat situation, then I technically have access to infinite healing, because I can just heal myself, wait for my MP to regenerate, and then heal myself again to wait for my MP to regenerate. So, like, being all picky about healing items really only restricts the amount of healing that I can do during active combat, rather than outside of it. But I'm probably still going to be using healing spells outside of combat anyway when I get to the Nest of Evil. I'm interested to see how the Nest of Evil goes in this footage, because my memory of the footage is that the Nest of Evil is a fucking disaster. And I think I said that about my last Charlotte video that I uploaded, but it turned out to be not that bad. I think this time it's going to be really, really awful. And in fact, I remember specifically something happening towards the very end of the Nest of Evil in this run that's... it's going to be really funny visually when we get to it, but at the time when I was actually playing the game, it was like the most incredibly frustrating thing I'd ever experienced. Probably not actually, but a very frustrating thing to experience. So if you're interested, keep watching for that, because it's going to get... If this footage was like boring, if it was just me steamrolling through everything and you wanted to watch me suffer and get the shit kicked out of me, don't worry, that's going to come in the Nest of Evil. The Nest of Evil specializes in kicking the shit out of you. It's just like... It's just shit kicking central, pretty much. That's what they should have called it. Anyway. We got some less painful stuff to get through before we finally reach the Dark Academy, so... First of all, this little spot here is the most dramatic advantage the Sorceress Crest gives to you, and it makes trying to fight these chicks with only Charlotte much, much easier. I didn't do, like, the bad ending for this run. There's no point. I just wanted to fight them normally. And as you can see, the thing about the Sorceress Crest is that it, oh yeah, that was risky. So yeah, it makes it easier, but it doesn't make it, like, totally foolproof. Because the Sorcerer's Crest reduces cast time by a percentage rather than by a flat amount. So the fact that Sanctuaries take so long to cast means that the Sorcerer's Crest reduces it by a large amount, which is why it's casting so much faster and why it's so much more viable to just only play as Charlotte and just cast it whenever they're winding something up that takes a long time to beat them. Excuse me. So the use of the Sorcerer's Crest kind of solves one of the two biggest problems with Circle of the Moon. What the fuck? Portrait of Ruin, which is the Charlotte or the Stella Loretta Sanctuary cast fight, which I think is like not really a very fun idea. But there it basically works out fine, even though I did get hit. But oh well. So yes, as I mentioned, the back half of Hard Max Level 1 is really where things get brutal. And I don't actually quite remember how this part of the run goes. What's funny is that if you play as... on Richter mode, you can actually just kind of skip all this, because Richter has the super jump from the start. So whenever there's an open ceiling on Richter mode, you can just, like, jump over everything. But unfortunately, Charlotte has to actually fight everything. And the reason I'm using Raging Fire and not Explosion is because I'm fighting... Like, everything that I'm going to be fighting here is going to be constantly jumping around, which is where Explosion is really not good. It's not good at, like, hitting enemies that are constantly moving, which is what the Hunchbacks are, is what the Toads are. And it does, like, okay damage. That right there, I didn't realize for a long time what was even happening when that happened. If you guys didn't notice it because it was so fast, there are two crows right above the entrance to this first indoor room of the Dark Academy, and if you jump at the start of the room, which you're probably going to want to do to try to fight the dragonfly, the first dragonfly that shows up, then the crows will activate and they'll swoop down and fucking hit you. And the first like 4 or 5 times that happened to me, I like didn't know what had happened because I like didn't see the crows and I didn't realize. I think I just didn't realize they were there, because they usually, with the way that I had navigated the room prior to that, they never like activate if you clear out that room in a way that's more conventional. But there, if you jump at the very start, they do activate. So that was what happened. And it's kind of a weird. The consequence of that interaction is that the game has a very specific way that it wants you to clear out that room. It wants you to clear the first dragonfly. You can't like just sit on the floor and do it basically, but now you can't jump until you're further along into the room than you would perhaps want to be at the very start. Anyway, the dragonflies are really the more annoying thing in the Dark Academy than anything else, because, and I've already kind of talked about this, because their projectiles just kind of like spew out all over the place when they shoot them. They can just fly into you. They can just like fly around and like fuck around. I feel like I complain about these guys every time they show up, so I'm gonna try not to repeat myself. But so far, at this point in the game, like, the fact that I'm playing as Charlotte instead of Jonathan hasn't been super impactful, because, like, the dragonflies are still dying in one hit. Everything is dying pretty fast. The differences aren't really going to become apparent until 13th Street, I guess is like, really different on Charlotte than it is on Jonathan. The Forgotten City, kind of? Not really, and then the Nest of Evil is like the big difference maker. But for the Dark Academy, the only thing that's going to be really different is how I fight the boss at the end, and I don't remember how that goes. So I'm interested to see if it's like a disaster or if I pull it off correctly. Part of what's nice about doing this New Game Plus run where I don't care about map completion is that if there's a part of the game that I really don't want to deal with, I can just skip it. Like right there, I had 2 paths that could have taken me from the middle of that part of the Dark Academy to this hallway here. One of them was the path that I went through, where it was the dead warrior and then the crows on the desks, and then the other one is 2 minotaurs in a room together. And the minotaurs on hard mode, like I already mentioned, walk faster than they do on normal mode, and that simple fact makes them like 5 times harder to fight, because suddenly like you can't really maneuver around them as well. And the consequence of the fact that they walk faster and the fact that they have their axes held up over their head is that jumping over them is like almost impossible, and jumping over them is something that you want to be able to do, but the fact that they're constantly walking towards you means that if you like jump forward towards them, you're probably just going to walk right into their axe head. So it's very tricky. Okay, so here's the Frankenstein boss. I've already like talked a bunch of shit about this boss. I'm going to see... I didn't see if I swapped to Tempest or not, or if I did Summon Gunman. I'm guessing it's Tempest, yeah. This is still probably the smartest play. But I would have liked something a little bit more like methodical and flexible. Because the thing about the Tempest strat is that now if I want to deal damage to him, I have to be right up in front of him. And with Frankenstein, you want to be as flexible as possible with your positioning. Although the Sorcerer's Crest does make things like that possible. Like I barely got that Tempest off in time before he actually started firing. And that only worked because I have the Sorcerer's Crest making the cast time so much faster. And there, okay, that was a no damage. Wow. Okay, well, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm very surprised that that was a no damage. But it just kind of worked out basically. He kept on doing the machine gun attack, and I kept on having Tempest up when I wanted to have Tempest up, and I never really got into an awkward timing. So, oh well. I think this next boss fight kind of goes badly. So for every time I say I think this is going to go bad, it turns out that it's going to go really well. So maybe I should just say that about everything, right? This is another fun thing you can do in MaxLv1 is that the fact that there's no incentive to fight enemies means that I can just fucking run past them right there. I also never quite figured out a good way to kill this guy. Well, I guess that's a good way. Because sometimes when he, like, tucks his head into the ground like that, he can't be damaged even by, like, explosion or thunderbolt, but then sometimes, as you saw right there, he can. So I don't know. I don't know what that's all about. Ah, yes, the Armored Fleaman on hard mode. Fucking dumbest shit. Again, not that bad there, but wait till we get to the Nest of Evil. The Nest of Evil is when I'm gonna start unloading all my anger. I'm gonna try to moderate it because I think, like I said in one of my previous videos, I don't like being like really mad at video games, but the Nest of Evil is always frustrating, and in this run, it was particularly frustrating for a couple of specific reasons. A lot of the spells that I got, in order to... Jesus Christ, I forgot that I did that. Okay, well, that's probably the smartest thing to do, because, like, it's just really hard to fight those guys, even with Charlotte. Because Explosion... Usually when Charlotte goes up against evasive enemies, it's like, oh, we'll just use Explosion or Thunderbolt, but if they're that evasive, then they just don't... It just doesn't work. Use Piercing Beam, you doofus. What is this Spirit of Light shit? See, this is not smart. And the reason I keep on jumping back in instead of, like, trying to fight them is because, like, you just never fucking know what's going to happen to these guys. If I try to jump over that fireball and then, like, go forward to start hitting them with Tome of Arms X, then they're probably just gonna fucking walk into me. Because that's their favorite trick. There's a save station down in that little pit, so if I had taken damage up to this point, I would probably go down there and visit it. And I think I do that in some of my runs, but I don't do that here because it didn't end up being necessary. And here I think is my first usage of yes, yes, do it. Alright, so Time Stop. Time Stop is a spell that I literally never used until I started doing these runs on Charlotte, and I specifically only use it for the late game. So what I said before about MaxLv1 removing any incentive to fight enemies, and therefore meaning you can just, like, skip them and there's no reason not to. That's what Time Stop... Once you realize that, and once you realize that you have Time Stop, it's very tempting to just Time Stop through everything. The only reason you wouldn't is because a lot of enemies are kind of arbitrarily immune to Time Stop, where Time Stop will stop some enemies from moving, but then some enemies will just ignore it. Like I think the Dead Warriors, the guys that ride back and forth on the skeletal horses, those guys don't get affected by Time Stop. I bet money that the Quetzalcoatl, the hunchbacks that ride around on the skeleton dragons, I bet they don't get affected by it either, although I don't know for sure. Yeah, having Charm Necklace on is not really, like, a very smart idea. I mean, it's especially not for this guy, because I don't think this guy does any magic attacks. I think he only does physical attacks, but like I've said before, generally the plan in hard mode max level 1 is just not to get hit. So, like, I feel like 10 mind here and there is not really that important. But I mostly just have it on for immunity from Curse. So that way, because the Curse is especially debilitating on Charlotte, because she relies so heavily on her spells. Curse gets rid of all your mana. I mean, I could just drink a non-curse potion, but I don't like doing that if I can avoid it. So far this guy's giving me pretty good patterns. The attack that I really don't want him to do is when he summons blocks in like a circle, because I just have a really hard time dodging that one. And on normal mode, he only throws the blocks at you that you can physically see. But then in hard mode, wow, another no damage. Okay, well, huh. It's because he never did the attack I was in the middle of describing, where he summons 5 blocks in a circle, and then he throws like all 5 of them at you, whether they're on the screen or not on the screen. And I go Burnt Paradise first. This is unusual. I guess, well, actually, no, this actually makes sense, because the reason that I do Burnt Paradise last in a regular run is there are 2 reasons. Number 1, it's because the Winged Boots are available in 13th Street, and number 2, because whatever zone I do last is the zone that I'll be the highest level for. So the reason I do the Burnt Paradise last usually is so that way I can go to 13th Street first and get the Winged Boots, and then and so that way I can be the highest possible level for Burnt Paradise, because the Burnt Paradise is like the most dangerous of the 4 late game paintings in my opinion, because it's full, especially on hard mode, because it's full of environmental hazards. It's full of things that give you status effects, and on hard mode, environmental hazards do extra damage. I think I already mentioned that, but it's worth reiterating here, because like the Burnt Paradise is full of environmental hazards, and the 1-2 combo of getting petrified or getting poisoned and then getting hit by an environmental hazard is the thing that's like practically guaranteed to kill you. I mean, I have anti-venom potions, I have anti-curse potions, but there's no such thing as an anti-petrification potion, and I'm actually surprised that I went to the left, because as you might have briefly seen, the left path, or the right path, rather, through the Burnt Paradise has more of those Medusa heads that petrify you. Like, the first big room you get into on the path to the right is full of Medusa heads that petrify you, but I guess I was just confident enough that I could get through it really fast that I wouldn't have to deal with them. And there might be something on the left that's, like, even worse. I don't really remember. But typically, if I was playing, like, hard mode max level 1 and I was, like, really worried about my survivability, I would go right. Or I would go left and not right. But, oh, I think I remember what it is. If you go left on, the Burnt Paradise from the start, you have to go through a room with 2 Minotaurs in it, and they're just kind of hard to fight. Because they like... If you want to make sure that they don't damage, because they walk so fast in hard mode, it means that you have a very limited window to kill them before they're on top of you and before they can threaten doing a lot of damage. So I think I just figured it was easier to take my chances in the room with a Medusa heads, and just walk through it really fast than it was to try to fight like 2 fucking Minotaurs and deal with all their bullshit. No pun intended. So that's probably the right call. And this is where time stop is really important. Is here, yeah. Anytime the Rippers are involved, you just time stop. Like, they give you a tool, right? Like, fighting the Rippers on Charlotte is a fucking nightmare. The only reason it's at all viable on Jonathan is because Jonathan has access to the Mastered Shuriken, which can just shred them in 2 seconds. Charlotte doesn't have that. Even with the Sorcerer's Crest, she has to take time to cast at the time, and that is not time you have when you're fighting the Rippers. So that's what time stop is all about, and what time stop is really good at. And here, I actually might want to be using Tome of Arms 3 instead of Tome of Arms X. The reason, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Because the thing is that Tome of Arms X does holy damage, and the Medusa is weak to holy damage. But the thing is that Tome of Arms 3 has a wider, like, range of coverage. So when she does this spell that summons a bunch of Medusa heads, having Tome of Arms 3 would mean that I would be able to destroy more of them at once. But it's not a huge deal. And Tome of Arms X is probably doing enough damage to make up for that particular situational benefit of Tome of Arms 3. Yeah, the Medusa head boss it's simultaneously like it's trickier on Charlotte. I would say it's definitely harder on Charlotte, but it's also easier in a way, in the sense that like the fact that you have to sit on the floor to cast means you're not incentivized to like jump as often, and that means that like because with Jonathan, the fact that you can jump and attack in midair and like have full air control means that you kind of like you feel like you should always be trying to attack her, because you always have an opportunity to do so. But with Charlotte, you have to be much more like there are parts where you just can't damage her. And is that a no damage burnt paradise? Huh. Well, what do you know? Thank you, time stop. There were probably places earlier in the run where I could have used time stop just for the sake of speed, but with Burnt Paradise and with a lot of 13th Street, time stop didn't feel like something I was doing for convenience. It felt like it was just the only tool that I had that could solve the problems that I was encountering. So that's why I wasn't using it earlier, even though it probably would have been faster. Do I start off with time stop? I actually think I should start off with something else here, because the first enemy you encounter in this part of 13th Street is a light keeper, and those things are weak to ice. Maybe I just jump over it. I probably just jump over the first enemies here. Excuse me. That's what's nice about New Game Plus, is that you start off with the winged boots, so you're running faster. And if you're playing max level 1, you're also not incentivized to fight random enemies at all. So if you can just jump over them, you should, and the winged boots makes it much easier to just jump over enemies. So it's a nice little combination. I also know the back half of this game better than the front half, because I actually practiced a lot of this. I think that's why I was able to get through the Burnt Paradise in the way that I did. And 13th Street is that I actually practiced like the individual levels, which I didn't do for City of Haze or Sandy Grave or any of that, because the first half of this game on New Game Plus is just so not threatening. Like you saw it with your own eyes. Everything just dies because of your stat buffs. I guess the Dead Warriors are affected by Time Freeze, because he didn't show up there. Maybe he just hadn't activated yet. Because I feel like if these guys were affected by Time Freeze, I would just be Time Freezing again to kill this guy, but apparently not. There's a breakable floor here that I could go... Oh, they are affected. Okay, interesting. There's a breakable floor back there that I could have used to get... Because there's an energy tank down there, so if I had taken damage prior to this point, I could have healed it off by going down there and getting the energy tank. Didn't end up being necessary. And you might think, Shovatar, how could you possibly take damage if you're just spamming time stop? Anything can happen in this game. It, like, the second the time stop falls off, what if that's the second that, like, I activate some fucking Ripper across the room and he jumps and throws a dagger at me and he hits me? Like, these things can just happen. But here, fortunately, everything goes pretty much as planned. This is pretty fucking risky, but whatever, man. And this is just dumb. Like, you can't jump over this guy if you're playing as Charlotte or Jonathan. Like, it just doesn't work. This is fucking scary. Okay. Yeah, if that Mothman had hit me there, it would have been all over, but the bigger mistake really was trying to jump over the dog instead of just fighting it, because you can't jump over it. He knows if you try to jump over him, then he'll just run and he'll just like hop backwards and you just land right on top of him. Would make more sense to do there, because he's not affected by time stop, so I couldn't just time stop and avoid him. I think what would have made more sense to do there would be to just drop down and actually fight him, or just like sit up on that higher platform and use like Explosion or Thunderbolt, because I'm pretty sure his like Curse Breath attack can't hit you if you're up on that highest platform. I know it dodged me by molecules on normal mode, and I know that his Curse Breath attack has more horizontal coverage on hard mode. Like he shoots 2 loops of it instead of just 1. I don't think it goes any higher vertically though. So I think if I just sat up on that ledge, I could have just attacked him from a position of safety and not risked dying there, which would have been very, very bad. Or to put it more accurately, not risked using a healing item there, because the whole point of this first part of the game before the Nest of Evil, the whole point of the pre-Nest of Evil Portrait of Ruin is to try to get through it without using healing items. Where it's like, as you saw in the clock tower, like, I'll use them if I feel like I absolutely have to. But I really want to save all of them for the Nested Evil, if I can. So that's really what the challenge is. I don't really expect to die at all. I don't expect to die at all in the whole run, unless I, like, fuck up my... I mean, I did, but I don't expect to unless I fuck up my, my item management, or unless I get, like, super cocky. So here, I feel like this was a mistake, because what I should be doing here is I should be using Summon Gunman and not Piercing Beam. I think the reason I didn't use Summon Gunman is because I was concerned about the cast time. But in my normal Charlotte run, I use Summon Gunman just fine, and there I don't have the Sorcerer's Crest, so... Because the thing is that you want to be in front of this guy for like a certain period of time, but you don't want to be in front of him for too long, because then he'll start doing like real attacks. What you want to do is bait his grab attack, and then oh Jesus fucking Christ, oh my God, okay, well, okay, Jesus, well that's not the plan. I'm like actually fighting this guy, which is not what I was supposed to do. And here the problem here is that now he's too far over to the right, so I can't like. If he's too far over to one side of the screen, I can't keep doing the thing where I like bait his grab attack, then jump over him, then bait the grab attack and jump over him. Because when you jump over him, he will kind of back up a few steps. So you have to... So if he's up against a wall, or he's up against that like outcropping above the entrance and the exit, then you can't really jump over him because you're going to run out of like space to jump into. You'll either hit the outcropping and fall on top of him, or you'll just like fall on top of him. So if he's too far to the left or the right, you do kind of have to bait him closer to the center of the boss area to keep doing it. And there, like, it just totally didn't work. I didn't pull off what I was trying to pull off at all, but I still survived. I took basically exactly as much damage there that I could have, because if I had taken one more hit, then I would have had to use a healing item just to be safe. Alright, now the Nest of Evil is unlocked, and now I'm going to the Nest of Evil. Oh, God. This is gonna be so fucking bad. I know it. I know it's going to be. I think I get out of this with one... Because right now I have, what, 9 potions, 8 high potions, and I think 2 super potions? I think I get out of the Nest of Evil with 1 super potion. So let's see if my memory is correct about that. I think the first few floors go pretty smoothly, but then there's a certain point where it changes. And if you've watched my other videos and paid attention to my endless complaining, then you already know what the part is going to be. But let's find out. Let's find out how badly I shit the bed on the parts that I shouldn't. Because there are parts of the Nest of Evil that I'm expecting to fuck up on, and then I'm expecting to to take a bunch of damage on, and then there are parts that I'm expecting to basically no damage. And I would say this entire first floor, like the first 6 rooms, are like, I feel like I shouldn't really take any damage here. But let's see what happens. This room is actually kind of dangerous, because you want to use Spirit of Light to fight the Archdemons when they show up, but Spirit of Light is temperamental, and you also want to fight them one at a time, which means that I can't go too far over to the left, or else I'm going to trigger the second one, and you don't want to fight 2 of these guys at the same time. You don't really even want to fight one of these guys at the same time, but they force you to here. So yeah, if Spirit of Light keeps hitting him, then it's fine, but if he flies like too far off the screen, like he can go up into the ceiling. I'm trying to remember what the next room is. Yeah, this took me a while to do, because I like to actually remember, because I would like to go into the rooms with the spell that I want already selected. I don't want to take the time to pause and then put the spell on, because even if it's like almost instantaneous, that is like a fraction of a second where the enemies are going to be able to start moving around. I want to go into the room with my stuff ready and just start it up. So this room, oh god, okay. That worked because Explosion does splash damage, I'm pretty sure. And Raging Fire actually might have been just as good there, but maybe it would have been worse, because Explosion, what I mean by splash damage is that if something gets hit with Explosion, then it'll also hit other things around it with the Explosion damage. So that's like 3 Minotaurs all packed together like that, means that they're all going to take each other's Explosion damage. So I think that's why they all died so fast. Because normally Explosion is only supposed to hit something once, and 1 fully charged Explosion isn't enough to kill a Minotaur. I think acidic bubbles does strike damage. I think there's probably niche uses for acidic bubbles in other contexts, but I only ever use it for the final guards. So the Balor fight is interesting because I've tried fighting this guy because this guy is weak to slash damage, and I've tried fighting this guy with Tempest, but it just doesn't work. It's just so much because the thing about this guy is that the trick is to stop attacking him as soon as you think he's about to wind up an attack, because you have to react to his attacks like instantly, and having to cast Tempest even with the Sorcerer's Crest is just too much of like a commitment in time and positioning, and it's just so much easier to fight him with the melee weapon the whole time, even if you're Charlotte. So do I put on Thunderbolt here, or am I still using Explosion? Thunderbolt, do it. Do it, please. 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 Fuck. Ah. That was overthinking, because Thunderbolt would absolutely be smarter here because it would kill the Bomber armor in one shot, and it would do exactly the same thing to the Dragonflies that it did there with Explosion. But I think I didn't want to try it because I just didn't want to risk it. Like, I knew for a fact Explosion worked, and I wasn't sure if there was some weird fucking quirk of Thunderbolt which would make it, like, not work when it should. That was very... well, that was what I thought would happen, so I can't exactly say I got lucky there, but... if they hadn't died to that last Spirit of Light, I would have been in very bad shape. So far, the parts that should be going smoothly are going smoothly. Oh god, this next room. This is where, like, the fact that you're playing as Charlotte becomes a gigantic problem, because you basically have no options here. Well, you have one option, which is what I'm gonna demonstrate, and I'm buffing my defense as much as I possibly can, because I am not gonna fight the enemies in here with any spells. And I'm certain I'm going to take damage. Okay, so this is where I use Greatest 5, and I have to use Greatest 5, because I have to do, like 80-something damage to one of these guys to get them out of their armor and to get them to back the fuck off. And you don't have time to cast spells. Like, you don't have time to finish a Tempest, you don't have time to finish an Explosion, or a Thunderbolt, or a Piercing Beam, or a Raging Fire, or anything else that would do enough damage to break them out of their armor. You just don't have the fucking time to do it, because they come towards you so fast. So, Jesus fucking Christ. I'm just trying to fight the fucking enemies, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. Anyway, sorry, I was very distraught about taking that damage there, because I felt like it shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't use any potions yet. Oh, did I use another high potion? I only have 7 left. I thought I only used 1 in the clock tower. Where did I use another high potion? That's weird. I don't remember that at all. Whatever. Anyway, so here I'm only going to attack this guy with a melee weapon, just so I can give my MP a chance to regenerate, so that way I'm sure that I'll have enough for the boss fight coming up. There's something I could do on this boss, which I don't. I do it in the boss rush footage, but here I just fight him with Explosion. In the boss rush footage, I fight the boss with a different spell. That's another thing where, like, when the time came to do the boss rush, I was more willing to experiment, but here, I just wanted to do whatever I was absolutely sure would work. Because the spell that I use in the boss rush is the Salamander spell. It summons a big, like, fire serpent that does mega damage, and that thing, because this guy's weak to fire damage, the Salamander absolutely annihilates this guy. But I wasn't 100% sure at this point in time how the Salamander worked exactly, and I didn't want to risk... I didn't want to risk it not doing what I thought it would do, and, like, fucking up my kill somehow, and I just wanted to... Like, this is a guy I should never take damage on, in Portrait of Ruin, so I really didn't want to do anything to fuck up, I didn't want to fix something that wasn't broken. I knew Explosion would kill him, and I didn't want to risk it. Risk doing anything different, rather. So, I took damage there, but honestly, that room with all the armored fleamen, that's like the first room that I can think of in the Nest of Evil where it's like, yeah, I can see myself taking some damage there. I mean, that's why I put on the Diamond Brooch. and why I put on like the Traveler's Hat, because I was expecting to take damage. I just didn't take damage in the way that I thought I did. The way I usually take damage in that room is that after I use Greatest 5 and I start meleeing them, like one of them zooms like between my melee attacks and bonks into me while he's still in his armor before I can kill him. It's not usually the case that I cleanly get the first rush of them all out of their armor like that, but there I succeeded in doing what I expected to fail at, and then I failed at doing what I expected to succeed at, which was killing them after they get broken out of their armor without taking any damage. Which is always very frustrating. What's nice about Piercing Beam also is that, I guess a lot of spells do this, but they have a tendency to kill things that are like outside of the screen that you can't see, which I have an issue with, like things being outside of the screen and also still being tangible, but this is a positive version of that, a positive consequence rather of that problem, where enemies can be off the screen. That means they can shoot at me from off the screen, but it also means I can kill them from off the screen before they can ever actually pose a threat to me. Yeah, those guys are super fucking dangerous. I don't even want to think about how much damage they would do to me if they actually hit me. But it's a fucking gigantic chunk. Do I use Spirit of Light here? What's in this next... Oh, no. Piercing Beam. Yeah. Or Thunderbolt, maybe. What did I put on? Piercing Beam. Yeah, that works fine. Thunderbolt would probably be better, because these guys on hard mode, I can't kill them with one fully charged Piercing Beam. I have to do a full charge one, then a non-charge one. But a full charge Thunderbolt, I'm absolutely certain would one-shot those guys. So, here is Zephyr from Dawn of Sorrow. In my normal mode footage, he did something that really fucked me up, and I was really mad about it. So let's see if he's a little bit more reasonable this time. I eventually learned to do... When he stops and like charges up his like time freeze attack, I would sometimes try to like juke the attack by jumping up in the air and canceling it entirely, but I eventually decided that it was smarter to just like, if he's charging up his time freeze attack, just hit him and get him to dash at you, because I know I can dodge the dash. Especially with the winged boots, like the window for dodging it is so generous. And Summon Gunman is not exactly like... Summon Gunman is doing like as well as anything would do here, honestly. Because like Explosion... He can't jump over Explosion, but Explosion doesn't do as much damage as Summon Gunman, and I just want to get that guy dead fast. The faster he dies, the fewer chances he has to do something that can just randomly fuck me up. And also Explosion, he can kind of just dodge Explosion too sometimes. If he's zooming up in the air like that and like diving around, then Explosion just like doesn't hit him. So now, I think this next floor should also be pretty smooth. I can't really remember anything happening in this floor that gave me trouble, but you never fucking know. This was the floor that I had to farm, because this is the floor with the horse demon in it that drops Thor's Bellow. So I know this floor better than the other ones, I would say. Doesn't stop me from almost getting fucking punched in the face. This guy also does like crazy high damage too, so he's really dangerous to try to actually fight. Like that lightning attack does a million fucking damage. His punch does like a million fucking damage. That's why the safest way to fight him is to just like respect him at a distance when he does like wait for him to do the punch attack, and then wait for him to do the lightning attack, and then just jump behind him and hit him while he's not doing any hit him while he's doing the lightning attack. So that way you know for absolute fact that he's not gonna randomly hit you. But that's also like a tricky distance thing where you have to be far enough away from him to not get hit by the punch, like charge attack, but also close enough to him that you can still see him and still see what he's doing, which is kind of a very specific distance. I think this is a floor that I can clear entirely with Piercing Beam, actually. Piercing Beam and Tome of Arms X, anyway. Do I swap out? No, there's no reason to swap out here. Is this gonna actually kill them? Okay, wow. I think there I had to do that because a Piercing Beam, because the Vice Beetles move faster on hard mode, I think? No, they spew poison farther on hard mode. Interesting. Well, because the reason I'm confused now is because in my normal mode footage, I thought that I could use a fully charged piercing beam, but I think I was wrong about that. I think I had to item crash, dual crush there, no matter what. So this should be a no damage, but I think I fuck up and get hit here. I don't actually remember 100%. Let's find out, shall we? Because I don't remember if this is where the disaster starts or not. Well, because if the disaster doesn't start here, it's going to start right afterwards. It's crazy how different... Okay, good, no damage. That's what it should be. Because that fight is over super fast because of Ice Needle. It's crazy how different it feels to fight that guy with the winged boots in Portrait of Ruin than it does to fight him with, excuse me, with Soma's like normal movement speed in Dawn of Sorrow. It's like a totally different fight. He's so much less scary when you can move faster. And you don't really... I wonder if there are winged boots or like Mercury boots in Dawn of Sorrow, and I just never learned about them because I never like really engaged with the game the way that I should. Okay, so now we're coming up on the double Frankenstein room, and something is going to happen here, actually, that I'm going to need to explain. I'll wait until it happens to start talking about it, because it was a very weird thing. So I am also changing my equipment to maximize defense here, because I don't plan on fighting these guys or killing them. The idea is just to survive. And I'm standing here for a little bit, I think just to kind of like psych myself up, I believe. Because like this next part is a fart, and it's also really hard. It's the worst part of the whole game, it's the most difficult part of the whole game. And doing it on Charlotte is just kind of an exercise in frustration. I think, why am I standing here? Did I go to use the facilities? Maybe that's what I did. Okay, well. This is very odd. I haven't done this in a long time. But this actually might explain what happens later. Because I encounter a problem with the emulator in the middle of the fight, which means I have to stop the fight in the middle of it, and then close the emulator and then reopen it again. And I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that I'm spending so much time, because the emulator does have a problem where if I don't do any inputs for long enough, then it's like sluggish in terms of how quickly it starts doing it again. So already I've taken damage and it's not my fault. So the trick here, the reason why the clear skies is so far into the room is so that I can actually like try to see both of the Frankensteins. As you can see, I've encountered a problem already, which is that, is this... What happened here? Oh, maybe this wasn't a glitch. Maybe the other clear skies was still up, and I couldn't... Where's the... Because there's... Yeah, there should be a barely perceptible cut in the second here. I think I thought... Okay, wow, that was actually so smooth I didn't even see when it happened. Yeah, I cut and I closed the emulator and I reopened it there because I thought that, I had encountered a glitch. I think what was actually happening, because you'll notice that I was like impotently like swinging my sword at the Frankenstein's attacks as they were coming towards me, and I think what was happening was the clear skies was still up on the other side of the room, and I thought that if I was far enough away from it, then it shouldn't be there. And by the way, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about with why this fight is shit, because the Frankensteins just wander off the screen and you can't see what they're doing. I thought I had encountered a glitch where, I thought like my sub-weapon wasn't working, because that had happened to me before in the Dracula X Chronicles version of Symphony of the Night on Maria mode, where like the game just like wasn't registering my sub-weapon uses when I was fighting the Doppelganger boss in Dracula X Chronicles. And I thought I was encountering the same thing there, because in my experience, like, pressing up and B, if there's a clear skies already active, like, disables it. And so that's what I was, like, trying to do, and then it wasn't, like, I couldn't summon a new one. So I think I was just very, very confused, is what I'm ultimately getting at. And I had to I basically panicked and assumed that a glitch was happening, so I stopped the emulator and then reopened it. And again, that was like a really smooth transition, so I think it's like... I think I could have probably not said anything at all, but I wanted to be totally honest with you guys, because you probably would notice. I'm sure the music skips a little bit. I didn't want people to think that I was, you know, doing anything untoward or hiding anything. And that was a thing where I paused, made a save state, closed the emulator, reopened it, and reloaded the save state. But I did it because I thought that there was like a glitch happening. And what's weird is that after I did that, I actually was able to immediately put up another Clear Skies again. So I don't know if it was like a coincidence where it just so happened that at the point that I reopened the emulator, like the Clear Skies was actually gone, or if I was right and it was a glitch. Because like I don't see why pausing and then closing the emulator and then reopening it would make a difference there. Okay, so this is where time stop is really important to be used. This room, I was very foolish in my normal mode run, and I just kind of like tried to kill them with like baiting them into tempests and like jumping at them and meleeing them. There's no reason not to just time stop in this room. In fact, I would say that this is your really only viable option for Charlotte, because Charlotte just takes so... It's just so inconsistent to do anything else. I don't know, maybe Raging Fire would be okay, but like, again, the problem is that by the time you walk forward enough into the room to activate them, like they're already jumping at you. By the time you can hit them with Raging Fire, they can also jump at you and throw their daggers at you, so it's like... You can't engage them at all, pretty much. This Abaddon fight, I think, goes pretty well, and the reason I'm standing behind him is because of that overhand attack that he does there. That was so fucking close, because that's the only way you can dodge it. If I don't have like a Tempest chambered and like ready to go, then the only way I can... Holy fucking shit! Then the only way I can avoid that overhand attack is if I'm behind him and I get into the corner where the attack originated, below where the attack originated from. And it's also easier to dodge the straight line attack if you're behind him, because you can just slide under the bugs. You can do that anyway. That was a fucking no damage. That was actually insane that happened. Wow, that was actually fucking crazy. But that's because the only reason that I did so well there is because I'd practiced that fight, not just in Dawn of Sorrow, but on Yoko specifically in Dawn of Sorrow. Because on Yoko, she has like the worst tools for fighting Abaddon. So you really have to, in terms of like being able to intercept the bug attacks, you have to dodge them a lot more on Yoko. And Charlotte's the same way, where Tempest is really good at blocking the bug attacks if you can get Tempest out. But if you can't get Tempest out, then you have to dodge. And so I had to basically prepare myself for, if I wasn't absolutely confident that I could have a Tempest ready when I needed it, that I needed to be ready to dodge. So that was kind of just what happened there. Oh god, this is such a disaster. Okay, okay. Well, okay. Actually, that's not that bad, actually. Yeah, that was just a total brain fart. I forgot what room I was walking into. And yeah, look at how much the Frankenstein room depleted my healing supplies. I have 3 potions and 3 high potions. Because the Frankensteins just randomly do fucking 400 damage to you, and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. I don't know, like, I feel like I watched that Frankenstein footage, and I really don't feel like I made any mistakes. But I took probably like 800 damage in there. I seem to be very concerned about this next room, but I can't actually remember what's in here. What did I put on? Explosion? Oh yeah, this room is pretty dangerous because the cave trolls on hard mode don't die in one full charge explosion. And the cave trolls, I mean, if you thought the Frankensteins did a lot of damage, the cave trolls, they started doing this thing in Portrait of Ruin where like the gimmick for the cave trolls is that they do like a fucking billion damage to you, which is a weird thing to do because in Symphony of the Night they just kind of are like regular enemies, but in Portrait of Ruin and then in Order of Ecclesia, their whole thing is that they'll hit you for like way more damage than any other enemy in the game will do. So here is the Grant Sypha Trevor fight. On normal mode, I talked about how my strategy was to try to burn down Trevor first, because he's sort of like the centerpiece of everything about the fight that's difficult, and the faster you get rid of him, just the easier your life is going to be. However, here I really encounter the pitfalls. That shit right there, by the way, like, Sypha finishes her attack, so I start jumping over Trevor, and then what does Trevor fucking do? He turns around and throws a shuriken. So, okay, I guess I'm just supposed to fucking stand there and die? Like, what is your fucking problem? And this is like... So it happened twice back there. Trevor is like, starts jumping over the gunman shots there. He did it twice there. I think he might do it again. Here, like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. This is so terrible. Okay. Look at that shit. And you know what it is? It's because he's jumping when I'm jumping. And I'm like... Because after I put down summon gunman, I just want to be away from him. And, oh my god, how do I get out of this? Oh, this is so fucking stupid. It's like, what am I supposed to fucking do when he gets that close to me? What's like the solution? Oh, here I really agonized over whether to use the super potion or not. Do I heal? Yeah, I think I start healing instead. Because now that fucking Trevor's dead, I actually have the time to sit here and heal. And Sypha's not doing her freeze attack anymore. She's doing her, her fire attack, which is much, much easier to avoid. Because you can just slide right under her. And now the fight is basically over. Once Trevor is dead, that's sort of when the fight is... Oh god, I'm terrified of Grant falling on top of me. That is the one thing that can still go wrong in this fight, is if I use Tempest, because I can just kind of walk back and forth underneath Sypha to avoid her attacks, but if I happen to use Tempest, and it knocks Grant off the ceiling and into me, then I can take a lot of damage, and that's kind of what I feel like that's going to happen later. Yep, there it is. Fucking shit. And now she's summoning a... I thought she was in the process of like, resurrecting Trevor, because when she, when she gets, like, surrounded by red like that, that's what she's doing. She's resurrecting Trevor as a zombie. And, like, the resurrected Trevor dies in a couple of hits, but the problem there was that I was one hit away from death, and I thought a resurrected Trevor was coming, so I, like, didn't have the time to heal. I could no longer safely just say, oh, I'm just going to go sit in a corner and cast a heal spell, because now Trevor is back. Even if he's weak, I'm sure he could do 76 damage to me. So I had to use a super potion there, because I thought that's what was about to happen, but instead she just didn't fucking finish resurrecting him, because the Tempest ticks interrupted here. And here, fortunately, I remember to take Tempest off before I fight the doppelganger, so, but it still fucking hits me. And here, I just have to... I can't use this last super potion. I need to save this last super potion for the Dracula fight, and if I die here, then I just deserve it. I think was my thought process. I don't know if the doppelganger is moving faster here because of the winged boots, because I feel like I've taken the winged boots off before, specifically before coming into this room, and it doesn't seem to make a difference. But generally speaking, the only reason that I took damage there was because I got a little bit too cocky, and I spent a little bit too much time being in front of the doppelganger when I shouldn't have been. And the only fucking reason I... If she just hadn't tried to resurrect Trevor there, or if I had known that she wasn't going to actually finish doing it, then I wouldn't have had to drink a super potion there. I would have just been able to run to the corner and go back to healing. Or if Grant didn't, like... I mean, I don't know. I think I was just distracted when Grant fell on top of me. I was looking at Sypha, and I was, like, paying attention to what Sypha was doing, and I just didn't notice Grant falling until it was too late. So that was a disaster, and now I have exactly one healing item left to get me through the rest of the game. So that's the Bronner fight and the Dracula death fight, where I now have one super potion. And the thing about super potions is that super potions are harder to take full advantage of than a high potion, because potions are like 50, high potions are like 200. And I'm also playing this. This also like is I'm not gonna play this the way that I should, but whatever. Um, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe. Well, because what I'm worried about here is I want to use Holy Lightning on the Bronner fight to clear out the paint. Um, so finish my point about super potions. Super potions restore all your health. So like technically the most efficient use of a super potion would be like doing it when you're at 1 HP. Obviously you can't do that, so like it's harder to get the full possible value out of a super potion than it is for a high potion or a regular potion. Anyway, I think that my main concern here is with I want to make sure that I have MP for Holy Lightning, which is why, even though it's technically safer, I think, to just shoot Bronner from a safe distance with Piercing Beam, I think I wanted to be more careful with how I use my MP. And, like, if I have the MP for it, then use Strength Boost to make my melee attacks do more damage, but then also be open to the idea of if I want to conserve my mana, then I'll just attack him. I'll just melee him normally, and I think because I think at a certain point in this fight I'm going to stop using the Strength Boost. Although Strength Boost doesn't seem to be costing that much MP. Presumably less than Piercing Beam would cost, especially if I was going to spam Piercing Beam. That's the real thing. Is that if I Strength Boost costs MP, but once I cast it once, I can just melee him. I don't have to keep casting it to keep getting damage on him, and he's being exceptionally nice to me. He's using the easiest attack to dodge like over and over and over again. So this can't possibly last. And I think here is when I stop using Strength Boost, or maybe I drink a tonic. Oh no, I'm still going? Oh, don't get hit by this. Okay, thank you. Okay, good. A lot of things could have gone wrong there. If he had queued up another paint attack, I don't know if I would have had Holy Lightning up in time. You can't skip through this dialogue with start. You have to cycle through it. You also can't skip through the dialogue with death, or else you get or at the end of the death fight, or else you get like soft locked. I think here I just go, yeah. I just did this to restore MP, so I didn't have to drink any tonics. And now I'm ready for the final boss fight. And this I think is where it gets like the most I'm never going to use Greatest 5. Greatest 5 is worth using on normal mode because it'll do like 800 damage to Dracula. There's absolutely no point in spending all the mana on Greatest 5 for on hard mode on max level 1, because there's no point in spending all that mana to do like 66 damage to Dracula. It's utterly pointless, but really like no dual crush is good on this fight if it's max level 1, because there's no utility. Like Holy Lightning is good because it destroys Bronner's like paint lines, but there's no equivalent to that in this fight. So on normal mode, I almost no damage to this. I have no damage to this boss fight on Charlotte before, and it's something that I feel like I should be able to do, but that is not how it works out. I also don't want Spirit of Light to hit Dracula, I want it to hit Death, because you only have to kill one of them to end the fight, and Dracula has 6,666 HP, Death has 4,444 HP. That was just bad decision-making right there. What I should have done there was I should have baited Death, and then jump over Dracula. Like, I had time to do that, but I don't know. I think I was still kind of pissed off from... I was rattled from the Doppelganger fight, and I was pissed off from how terrible the Grant Sypha Trevor fight was, so I wasn't really, like mentally, I was not in an optimal position when I went into this fight, so I ended up making mistakes that I otherwise wouldn't have. That's what I'm going to blame it on. Because I know this fight really well. Like, I'm confident with my ability to do this fight, but you still have to make the right decisions, you know? But that is what's nice about it, is that it is a matter of making the right decisions. Unlike, and I said this already, but I'm going to say it every single time I get here, unlike the Double Frankenstein fight, which is a matter of getting the right RNG patterns. So if this was... Okay, good. I'm very glad that he died there, because when they go to the center like that for the second time, they queue up this big attack that I think you're only going to see when I do in my Richter mode footage, because he dies too fast all the other times. Where he summons a bunch of scythes, and then fills whatever side of the screen you're on with them, and then you have to try to destroy them, because if you don't, then he turns them into fireballs, and then like fills the side of the screen with fireballs. But the problem with it is that the scythes are very like... The scythes are just very hard to kill. They seem like they have a very specific like hitbox that you have to actually like hit, and also they don't become destructible until after it seems like they should. So that attack is just really hard to dodge. This fucking asshole. I think there's a way that I could have not taken damage there. I think if I'd gone forward a little bit, because he only pile drives like the spot where you are. He doesn't go like a set distance in front of himself. So I think there, if I had like gone forward a little bit to bait his attack forward, then gone back to give myself some space, then I think I could have avoided that. But I didn't do that because I don't know. So there's the last healing item used. Now I really can't get hit again, or else I'm gonna fall over at the finish line, which is not really what I want. And this is another fight that I feel like I should be able to no damage, to be honest with you. It's harder to no damage it on Charlotte because of the dash attack that he does. You don't have the super jump to jump over it. You have to slide under it, which has a particular timing. But I still feel like I should be able to do it, and here I just kind of shit the bed, and I didn't no damage either. To be fair, the way that I ended up taking damage in the Dracula in this phase of the fight was pretty tough, and that's like a really bad situation, but there's not really any excuse for the damage that I took in the first phase. Because like watching it now in hindsight, like the correct solution there was just so obvious. I don't really know why why I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Oh well. I think I fuck up his dash attack too. I think I fuck up the slide. Yeah, I was a little bit too slow there. I think I hesitated a little bit, and that ended up costing me. Am I going to end this fight like one hit away from death? Because there are some attacks of his that can kill me right now. Like the scythe attack I think would kill me. But other than that, I think I'm 2 hits away from death at this point. Like 2 pile drivers. Pile drivers do 257, so 2 of those would kill me. The dash attack would kill me. Okay, I end the fight 2 hits away from death instead of 1 hit away from death. So that was honestly terrible. That was like really, really bad. But I did it. I did what I wanted to do. Well, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I did what I did. I met the bare minimum of the criteria that I'd established for myself. That being only stock up on healing items at the start of the run and then never go back and do it again. Which I did partially for challenge purposes and partially for just like smoothness purposes. Like that way I wasn't like constantly going back to Vincent to buy shit in the middle of the run. I still had to go back there to talk to Wind, but... And here I think I skipped through all the dialogue because I was pissed at how badly the Dracula fight went. In my Jonathan footage, I actually no damaged Dracula like I was supposed to, and I let all this dialogue like play out normally. But here I'm just mad, so I'm skipping through it all. Ugh. Yeah. And like, you know, I'm gonna say it again, if it wasn't for the fucking double Frankenstein room. Oh yeah, this is funny. If you don't... I never ended up going back there to purify him. There's like a little like dialogue bit where you purify Vincent to show you that you can use the purification spell to get rid of vampire stuff. And because I wasn't going back to Vincent all the time, I never got to see that. So it's a little funny touch there. So that's it for the main game. That's it for Jonathan and Charlotte. I have some Richter mode runs that I'm going to upload, and then it's going to be on to Order of Ecclesia, and then I don't know what exactly I'm going to do. Well, then it's going to be Adventure Rebirth, but I don't know what I'm going to do after Adventure Rebirth exactly. We'll see what happens. Because because I wanted to do all the 3D games. I wanted to do both N64 games and both PS2 games, but I might do something a little bit different for the N64 games because I don't really anticipate being able to no death those because of the fact that they are early 3D platformers with lots of like death pits. I'm probably just going to die over and over again. It's probably not going to be very fun, so I might do something a little bit different. I haven't quite decided on that yet. Anyway, to go back to Portrait of Ruin, I said before that New Game Plus is the most fun way to play the game. New Game Plus MaxLv1. I would stand by that, but I think it's obviously much more fun if you take advantage, if you do what the game wants you to do, which is not just use one character at a time. Like, there were problems I encountered when I played only as Jonathan, but really most of the problems I encountered were when I played only as Charlotte. Like, that's why the Frankensteins were such a problem, because I didn't have the super jump. That's kind of why the werewolf was a problem, although you can beat the werewolf with only Charlotte just fine. I just kind of fucked up, but yeah, don't do this. Is what I'm saying. Don't arbitrarily restrict yourself from using all of the tools that the game gives you. I just kind of did this to make sure that I fully understood what the characters were capable of doing, and it was a fun little exercise until it wasn't. Until it became like an actual run that I had to finish. Until I had to deal with the fact that I was 2 hits away from death at the very end of the run, and that I might have just lost like almost 2 hours of progress. That's not fun, but it is kind of fun to figure out like which of Charlotte's spells are the best in the different situations, and to make sure that you're to use all of her tools and then be rewarded for proper usage of those tools. But that there are elements of that are frustrating, obviously. And because most of the attacks in the game are physical, you also get punished a lot harder if you try to play hard mode as Charlotte than you do on Jonathan. So, that's about it. Hey, I no damaged Abaddon, right? That's pretty good. I think that was like the one thing about the footage that I thought was like a saving grace, because I mean, you couldn't pay me to go back and do this again and go through the fucking Double Frankenstein room again, but that was the one thing about the footage that I thought, okay, that makes it all right. The fact that I no damaged Abaddon, I fucking better after all the fucking practice I've had fighting that asshole. Yep, that's pretty much how I feel about the whole last part of this run. So, I'll see you guys next time. Keep your eyes peeled for the Richter mode footage, and keep on Earth rocking.